Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com. Well, a very pleasant good morning to you. This is Patrick Timpone, and we're back here, and it's OneRadioNetwork.com. Oh, I think I need to move my camera over a little bit so I don't get lost in the picture here. And it's October 18th, 2021, and we were just with you about 15 minutes ago, and we're back with one of our fave guys. Really just such an honor to have him on. It's Dr. Ray Peat. And Dr. Peat started long ago really working with progesterone hormones in 1968. He wrote papers, physiological chemistry and physics in 1971 and 1972. His dissertation, University of Oregon in 1972, he outlined his ideas regarding progesterone and their hormones closely related to it as protectors of the body's structure, and energy against the harmful effects of estrogen, radiation, stress, and the lack of oxygen. And he's been working with practical therapeutic effects of the various life-supporting substances, pregnenolone, progesterone, thyroid hormone, and coconut oil. Man, see, I'm going to be buying some coconut now because I had no idea he was such a coconut guy. Dr. Peat, good morning.
Good morning.
So coconut oil is good stuff, huh?
And butter.
And butter. Oh, man, yeah. Well, I love butter. Coconut, what's in coconut that we like? Why do we like that?
It's the saturated fat. It's shorter chains than in butter, and so it's easier to metabolize quickly. Tends to heat up your metabolism, burn calories faster. You can get fat on butter, same number of grams of fat than on that amount of coconut oil, but they're both very safe for your health.
So coconut oil heats up our metabolism, and Dr. Peat, we want to do that because...
sugar is the other main thing that will heat up our metabolism just by burning the right kind of fuel. And the faster your metabolism runs, assuming you can back up the possibilities by having the nutrients, everything you need to go ahead at that speed, then everything is easier to normalize the faster you run the machine. For example, if you slow down the rate of metabolism and oxidative respiration, you produce more free radical damage. So the faster you oxidize, the less damage you get from oxidation.
The faster we oxidize, the less damage we get from oxidative stress?
That
would be, we could deal more efficiently or better with poisons or chemicals or things that oxidize the biomolecules?
To an extent, the free radical theory of aging has a lot to it, but the faster you run your machinery, if all the nutrients to do it are present, then you produce less of those toxic free radicals.
The faster we're running the machine. So the machinery, you're speaking of the metabolism. Can you explain to us what that is really? Is it the whole energetics of the body just moving faster?
If you think of oxygen as the end point, everything tends to fall towards the atoms of oxygen. So if you remove oxygen from the system, all of those electrons that were flowing rapidly towards oxygen, creating a little bit of water and carbon dioxide, those electrons have no place to go, and they are what creates the free radical damage. So the rate of aging theory 100 years ago was popular, saying that if you could slow your oxygen consumption, you wouldn't age so fast, but exactly the opposite happens.
So the aging is caused by
a breakdown of order, and the faster you run electrons through the system, the tighter the ordering is.
the faster we run the electrons through the system, the tighter the ordering.
It's sort of like there's a negative electron pressure when the system is really running, and so it's in a laboratory that you don't want the germs to escape. You keep a negative pressure sucking air so that nothing leaks out of the lab because it's pulling air into it. And it's the same with the whole system of electrons flowing from one thing to another. If you slow the flow, then they can wander off. They get a positive pressure rather than a negative pressure. And those are the ones that are random and can do damage.
Wow, those are the ones that cause the oxidation.
Yeah. And so you don't want to just stop the free radical process by using antioxidants, because that can, in fact, increase the oxygen, increase the electronic pressure of the cell. And it has turned out 50 or 60 years ago, everyone was enthusiastic about slowing aging by using antioxidants.
Like vitamin C and things like that?
Yeah, and vitamin C is a good example because inside cells, it's an oxidant. And if you overload the system with the reductant vitamin C, it can stop the oxidative effect of vitamin C in the cell. Vitamin C in the cell is in the form of dehydroascorbate. About 70 or 80% of it is in the oxidant form. And if you overbalance that with too much, you start getting leaky electrons.
Leaky.
And it's the same with some of the treatments using things like N-acetylcysteine or anything that donates electrons. It's easy to get too much of them, and they will tend to disorganize the system. And
wow. So that's, could that explain why maybe a little bit of vitamin C or people have a good experience with a little, or, I mean...
yeah, all of our foods except seeds and nuts and grains, every food we eat contains enough vitamin C. The people who started saying we need 3,000 or 4,000 milligrams a day, it's true if you live on bread and pasta and peanuts and such, you can get scurvy. But if you eat fruits and vegetables and meats, eggs, fish, milk, all of those provide adequate vitamin C, but they don't show up in the chemical tests that people use because they were looking for a reductant form of vitamin C, which isn't what we have inside the cells. So if you eat meat, the meat has oxidant vitamin C in it, which can interchange when we eat it and show up as the reductant form and back into the dehydro form.
So, why could it be like some people believe if they have symptoms of flu, whatever that is, detoxification or whatever it's doing, that they would help them? But could that just be placebo?
No, Linus Pauling and several other people advocated taking doses of around 5,000 or so milligrams per day, and one of his followers said take it to bowel tolerance,
right.
Meaning up to the point where it causes diarrhea. And what it's doing is cleaning out your intestine.
Oh.
And detoxifying your body.
So that's what's going on. It's just helping the body to get rid of whatever it's trying to get rid of.
Yeah. And you get exactly the same results from any good laxative.
Castor oil or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom, they used to give us castor oil when we were kids, Dr. Peat, right? We were feeling bad. Give us a hit of castor oil. She said, go to bed, you'll be good. So we go, we wake up and we poop and, okay, go to school.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Dr. Thomas Cowan put out a video about the cells and what they really are and all of that, and we've been streaming it all weekend. I found it fascinating. I sent it to you, and he was talking about on this video the work of Hillman and Gilbert Ling, that the whole things of the cells and we believe inside are not what we've been told, or not what the pictures, right? Not what the pictures that the medical people tell us. Can you explain to us why this is important and what he's talking about?
For example, one of the pictures in Cowan's videos, I guess it's red blood cells or some, there are nucleated cells. It could be, I don't know, frog blood. I skipped along in the video, but anyway, the cell shows a ring colored material and then a dark nucleus. And about 100 years ago, people looking at pictures like that under a light microscope saw that outer thing as a membrane. And Hillman has gone over the microscopic history of biology and shown that all of those main ideas of standard biology are based on different kinds of optical illusions. For example, that black ring around the cells under a light microscope, all of it is a visual illusion resulting from the different optical density of the cell material and the surrounding material. You put a drop of oil in water under the microscope, it looks like it has a nice thick membrane around it. That's nothing but a pure visual effect. But it was taken by so many biologists to mean that there is actually a barrier membrane led to ideas like the sodium pump and all kinds of pumps to explain cell function. But between Hillman showing how these effects happen visually or physically, and Ling's work showing how you explain the functions in terms of physical states of matter and water, that he showed there's a coherent explanation for what people call the sodium pump and so on. That no pump at all. For example, if you take a piece of hair that has the protein and lots of potassium and calcium and other things bound with it, you wash it free of all of the minerals in an acid solution, and then you dip this piece of totally dead hair into some blood serum, and it will take up the potassium from the blood, excluding the sodium and the other minerals, resembling a living cell that, according to these standard conceptions, would have to be pumping one thing in and another thing out. And so just by that simple demonstration of dead hair or any dead biological material taking up a disbalance of the things that are in its environment. It's selective and binds them, but it doesn't pump anything. It's a passive process.
So, go ahead.
The passivity of the whole thing, from Ling's point of view, explains that it's in our nature to be well, in effect.
It's our nature. So, what is it that the mainstream biological and virologists and people have been doing for all of this time that Ling and Hillman contradict? How does that affect our view of our body? I mean, what's really going on that helps us to understand what our body is doing in these cells, if it's not like we're being told?
Yeah, Ling was, and many other people were showing that the body basically knows best what it wants from the environment, and the introducing the idea that it has to pump things, that it takes energy to live. That idea that everything that's in the cell at a different concentration than outside, they say that takes energy. And when Ling added up all of those things, the being alive took at least 15 times as much energy as the cell could possibly have. Life is impossible from the membrane pump perspective, but the way science works, you can supposedly demonstrate one pump working, someone else demonstrates another pump working, and altogether you need 15 times more energy than the cell could possibly have, but no one is pushed into explaining how that would be possible.
So what does that mean to us? That are we getting back to the idea that just with the proper nutrients, that the body is going to do what it needs to do and heal?
Very much, yeah. For example, the role of carbon dioxide. It's very obvious in Gilbert Ling's perspective that carbon dioxide is one of the most beneficial materials in the universe. It makes water alive, basically. And so if you're respiring intensely, producing a lot of carbon dioxide, that shifts away from the lactic acid and free radical damage. The carbon dioxide has an antioxidant effect against the harmful free radicals. It's the only antioxidant that is successful in the body.
So that's why when we overbreathe, get rid of too much carbon dioxide, we're not really helping ourselves.
We're turning up our lactic acid and the free radical producing damage form of oxidation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's really going on in the cells is not really what we believed. It's more. Do you think Cowan's onto it, and Gerald Pollack, this idea of this goo stuff, and more of a what do you think's really what our bodies are made out of?
Uh, well, I think in the video I saw one picture that looks like it was Sidney Fox's spontaneous formation of microcells, where he just heated amino acids and wet them, and they formed little cell-like structures, and in a warm medium with amino acids and water, they would bud and grow just like living cells, but there was nothing present but amino acids and water. And so the basic substance, you could say, is amino acids and water, and the other things, nucleic acids, that simplest form of protein and water will then select the materials for making nucleic acids. And so the genes, in effect, come after the living cell, and the genes are shaped according to the pre-existing cytoplasm. All of that is perfectly understandable by Gilbert Lane's perspective. But in the 60s, Leninger included that work of Sidney Fox's in his textbook, but it was so alien to standard biology and medicine that later editions of the book after Leninger died removed that most important chapter.
So that would explain the idea that what we think and what we believe, our state of consciousness, as well as our nutrition and our lifestyle, is affecting everything and not genetics affecting us.
Right.
Wow. Just the opposite of what we're told, right? All this genetic stuff is like, we're gonna fix the genes and you're gonna be healthy or something.
Yeah, it's for the standard medical biological approach. It's all a machine, and they think they understand what a machine is.
I see. So would that then harken back to the idea that just because grandpa or grandma had a bad heart, we're not going to have a bad heart necessarily, right?
No, but the tendency is there.
Where would the tendency be?
For example, there have been many historical studies looking at the records of populations.
Right.
And it works in animals too. If you starve grandma, the offspring are likely to be, in effect, malnourished for 4 or 5 generations after that.
Well, but that would not be something that. So it would just be all the way into the whole total organism. Would have this tendency, right, to be starved or something.
Yeah, if you overfeed the starved grandma's offspring, then it doesn't have to run that average of 4 or 5 generations. You can do it all in one generation.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like if you start with a baby born with a malnourished small brain, if you give it the nutrients and the support that the organism needs to use the nutrients, a good body temperature, for example, is necessary to grow brain material. And so with the right support, a small underdeveloped baby can go on developing outside of the uterus. And the earlier you start with repairing the historical damage, the more complete the correction can be. And working with animals, people have demonstrated that just by supplying the essential nutrients for brain growth during gestation, they can create animals, a rat or a chicken, for example, with a brain bigger than that species ever had, and more intelligent
Really?
than anyone that ever knew that species.
Fascinating. So that would add to this whole idea of somehow of evolution and how the species evolves, huh?
Yeah, it definitely disproves that our intelligence is a product of the genes only, because with an animal or a species that never got very far mentally, giving it great support, you can make it much more intelligent.
Giving it great support. So that would be a really good argument for moms and pregnancy and really making sure they're having all the nutrients, huh?
Yeah, and in the present situation, not vaccinating pregnant women.
Wow.
That the animal studies have shown that every vaccination has an adjuvant that is intended to create systemic inflammation, and every inflammation during pregnancy damages the development of the fetus.
Every inflammation in gestation is damaging the fetus in some way.
Yeah, thousands of experiments have demonstrated how sensitive the developing fetus is. But the World Health Organization goes on and advocates pregnant women getting influenza shots with adjuvant designed to create inflammation. It's probably the biggest crime of history to advocate vaccinating pregnant.
So these adjuvants are mercury and aluminum and other very anti-inflammatory things and poisons, right?
Yeah, or it could be the newer plant extracts or fats or things that they don't have a history of creating damage, and so they're putting them in as adjuvants that create inflammation, but no one has a history of the specific damage from that specific adjuvant.
And what are these? These are new kinds of adjuvants that they're using?
Yeah, in the present RNA vaccines, some of them are using either synthetic lipids or a plant extract.
Have you been learning any more about these injections that are going on? Are they as dangerous as many people are saying, in your opinion?
I suspect that Mike Eden and Sucharit Bhakti are the closest to being accurate.
Are they?
And they are both. They don't agree with each other on every detail, but they, for example, Eden says, I can't see any benign explanation for how this could be done innocently.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks there's a deliberate motive to sterilize the population.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When we had Bhakti on our show not long ago, Dr. Peat, he was really more concerned about these boosters, that he felt like if somebody just got one, they could maybe get away with it. But
yeah, it's a mass effect. A little damage
they build,
isn't as bad as sequential damages, one after the other endlessly.
Yeah. I was speaking with a lady, maybe early 40s, a young child, very healthy and not vaxxed, and she actually had intermittent bleeding and things like that, and really disrupting her cycle after being close in proximity to vax people for a night. That's interesting. So there's something going on, huh?
Yeah, the Pfizer manual for instructing the people who administer the vaccine, they were aware of research going back several years showing that whatever nucleic acid might be circulating in your blood
Yes.
shows up in your breath and your skin.
Wow.
The shedding is a perfectly soundly established thing going back 10 or 15 years.
So that would be what the shedding is, would be in the breath or through the skin somehow.
Yeah. And they warned about letting a vaccinated person be in the presence of a pregnant or breastfeeding woman.
Really? Wow. What about us guys? I mean, that we're only hearing the shedding with the ladies and the disruption of that. Anything there with the guys?
If it causes those extreme changes in women, there will be some analogous change in men.
So what, are we going to, do you think we're just going to want to be around vax people? Jeez.
Yeah. Several people have warned that vaccinated people should be quarantined for at least 2 weeks.
You know, somebody sent me an article, and I haven't vetted if it's true, but that's what they're wanting to do with the kids in Florida, some of them, for 30 days after they've been vaxxed. But I'll have to check that, that article out. I didn't know the source to it.
They have been talking about a self-propagating vaccine for years. You vaccinate one person, and that person sheds and vaccinates everyone around them. So the idea has been proposed as a way to spontaneously vaccinate the whole world without having to treat everyone.
Oh, great. That's great news, Doc. Dr. Ray Peat is with us. Thank you, sir, for being here. Stay right there. We're going to do a quick commercial, okay? And then we'll come back and we'll take some emails. Is that all right?
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Stephen Buhner, master herbalist, wrote an entire book on pine pollen. Previously, we asked him, what's the difference between gathering some pine pollen, eating that, and then maybe taking survival pine pollen and the grape alcohol, the tincture? What's the difference in the body?
Okay, the difference is pine pollen is probably one of the best nutrient food substances on the earth. And you see, it's made to be uptaken by all of the life around it. All of the other plants take it in and use it for growth. Many of the animals eat it, and it's a very nutrient substance. If you eat it, what happens is it goes through your GI tract and then puts it into the bloodstream, and there's a lot of great stuff in it. I mean, it's really high in amino acids and protein and vitamins, so it's a very magnificent substance. It's kind of a nutrient longevity tonic food, and it will over time raise levels, but if you really want to raise them fast, you don't want to let it go through your GI tract, hence the use of a tincture.
And you can click and order this great product right on our website. Any of these Surthrival links take you right to the pine pollen and order away. OneRadioNetwork.com. Well, it wouldn't make so much noise. I wouldn't be so crazy. And pine pollen, this is from Surthrival. We do have a couple of the Surthrival products on sale right now, and that would be the colostrum, which I love this product. I like to mix it with, I actually have some here, with some cacao and some organic milk, and actually put some mushrooms in there too, some different mushrooms, and it's really a nice little drink I like to have in the morning sometimes. And then some of the Grotein product from Shen Blossom. It's a really, the first ingredient in the Grotein product is bamboo pith. Can you imagine that? Bamboo? Yeah, why not? I mean, panda bears eat bamboo. So, anyway, so Surthrival, it's a great company. They have beautiful products, and the colostrum and the digestive bitters are on sale using promo code TREAT20, kind of a Halloween thing, TREAT20, 20% off on colostrum and digestive bitters now through the end of the month on any Surthrival link. So check it out. Get some pine pollen, get some colostrum, some digestive bitters, and I think you'll have fun. Dr. Cowan argued on, not argued, but his position during this video that I sent up to Dr. Ray Peat, and he seemed to like a lot of it. I don't know about all of it, but some of it. And that this idea of heat, and where Hippocrates said, if I can produce a fever, I can cure anything. Cowan is arguing, or conjecturing, that this gooey gel kind of stuff, rather than the way our cells really are, and the toxins get in there, and then when the body produces a fever, that it actually is melting this kind of fourth phase of water, the Gerald Pollack stuff and the gooey stuff, and this is how the body detoxifies with a fever, when they've been using what about the Indians? They go in with sweat lodges and, of course, saunas and steams, since the beginning of time, really. Long time. Indians used to do it a lot. I guess they knew what they were doing. So if you like to get a sauna, I think it's a wonderful way to keep healthy. I mean, I'm doing great with it. I just love our sauna. It's the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, and you can get one for $1,295 if you email me, Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com. $1,295. That's the best price you're going to get anywhere. I think the retail up on their site is $1,595, and we'll ship you one delivered for that price. And we ship them all over the world. We shipped a couple to Ireland last week, so we ship them all over the world. And these saunas get really, really hot. You'll sweat, and then it's the far infrared technology that also helps the body to detoxify. They've actually done studies. This is pretty cool, where they've taken the urine samples of people, and they'll see how much mercury and aluminum and every metals that come out. You do the sauna for 30 minutes, and then they'll do the samples again, and there's more comes out. So evidently, just heating up the body is not only getting it through the skin, but it's actually working through the kidneys, bladder, and I suspect more stuff's coming out with the poop as well. I don't know that. I don't think they measured the poop. So I think these are a great way to keep healthy, ongoing. You could sauna every day, probably the rest of your life, as long as you're getting the good electrolytes and water, like I do, probably every day for the rest of your life, and just be okay, I think. So anyway, just email me if you'd like to get one. It's Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com, and I'll give you the best price possible, and just depending on where you are, and we'll hook you right up, okay?
From the Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.
We're talking with Dr. Ray Peat. It's his website is raypeat.com. You can get his newsletter just by emailing Ray Peat's newsletter at gmail.com. Ray Peat's newsletter at gmail.com. All right. What's your next newsletter on, or the current one?
Immunology. Somewhat about the current COVID thing, but more on the background of the theory of immunology and how it was directed in the wrong direction by the pharmaceutical industry. Paul Ehrlich was a drug salesman, and he people knew about the vaccines against smallpox, and he was saying his drugs were magic bullets with the precision of an antibody, and so he was taking a myth about the smallpox antibody and using it to sell his magic bullet drug, and that has taken on a whole world of development, because the drug companies like that idea that there's something natural about their magic bullet chemical that it is so specific for every disease. It's as good as our natural antibody system.
And this was all, what, early 1900s?
Yeah, he was working with toxic dyes, working for the German dye industry, and found that the dyes were specific for different kinds of tissue, and got the idea that he could vary the dyes with chemicals in addition to the color, and kill, for example, an amoeboid disease without killing the host. So that was where the magic bullet idea came from.
Wow. What about this idea we were talking about, and Cowan mentioned, and I've kind of thought was true, on the fever idea? Do you think that's valid? Fevers and heat and saunas?
Sure. Just recently, I've been seeing the effects of raising the body temperature on people with Parkinson's-like symptoms,
really,
or Alzheimer's, losing memory and general cognition. And if you just even artificially get their brain temperature up to where it should be, around 99 degrees, their functions come back pretty well. But you have to be sure not to get the body temperature up without keeping the food coming in, having orange juice or milk while heating the body. Otherwise, these people in a weakened condition suddenly needing a lot of metabolic energy. It's very common to faint when you warm up quickly.
So if Patrick or other people that are generally healthy are doing saunas, if we're not feeling faint or whatever, we just feel good, should we still, you think, do some orange juice and milk before, after, during?
Yeah.
Why not? Huh?
Before, during, and after, it's all protective.
It's all protective. So I wonder how the heat could be helping the people with these neurological kind of Alzheimer's kind of thing. Could it be melting some of the yuck stuff out of the brain? Do we have any ideas how that could work?
I think it's shifting away from lactic acid, which is toxic, getting the CO2 up. Years ago, misunderstanding in the class convinced me that CO2 has very amazing curative properties. One of the students in the class had I think it was her mother or mother-in-law that she was taking care of, hemiplegic for 6 months after a mild stroke, but half of her body was useless. And she gave her a spoonful of baking soda in a glass of water, and in 15 minutes, the paralysis lifted.
Wow.
And all during the course, there was no recurrence of it. Just that one dose of baking soda was enough. In that situation, I think what it did was open up blood vessels in the brain. CO2 is a vasodilator in the brain, and so it restored circulation and restored energy-producing metabolism. It sustained its own production of CO2.
My goodness. Well, back there, didn't they, Dr. Peat, in the late 1800s and around 1900, I mean, they were using all kinds of these kinds of things, even turpentine, and right, to help people. I mean, all kinds of different natural remedies.
Yeah, and scientific medicine, so-called, had as its purpose the elimination of all of the alternative healing practices. The AMA was responsible for closing a great number of competing schools using not very good ethics in the way they did it.
Yeah. Were they using cannabis for healing at all back there? Do you know? Was cannabis being used?
Sure, it was irregular.
Really?
When I was about 8, the law had just been passed outlawing cannabis use medically, but I had a doctor who happened to have it growing in his backyard, and so I got dosed with it for a while, but didn't especially feel any benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Wow. Well, let's take some emails, okay? You ready? So
Okay.
Here's somebody that has some gold crowns and half crowns, and it was told that there's some kind of infections or bacteria under a couple of them, and advised to remove them. Do you think, Dr. Peat, could there be another way to solve this problem rather than taking them off?
Yeah, gold is antiseptic the way amalgam is, but since silver and mercury are much more soluble, they're the worst ways to have a permanent filling. But a gold crown intrinsically is powerfully germicidal, and it doesn't dissolve toxins into your body in any extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Here's a lady, she turned 40 in December. I turned 40, and presently I'm struggling with the changes in my body. This past winter, I started dealing with migraines around the time of my period. I knew immediately that something was awry and started revisiting Dr. Peat's work. The migraines seemed to be abated for now, but now I do suffer from premenstrual headaches. The most pressing issue currently is that I gained an unexpected bit of weight over the last year or so, very unusual for me. I feel like I have a pregnant belly. If I let my belly relax, my sex drive is also not where I'd like it to be. So she's really going through it with, I guess, perimenopause, right? Going through menopause. Is it possible that I'm still recovering from estrogen dominance and now my body is in a healing mode?
Around the late 30s and into the 40s and 50s, the failure of progesterone is the main problem related to menopause and premenstrual syndrome. And the pharmaceutical industry was responsible for creating the idea that the menopause is a deficiency of estrogen, when in reality it's a deficiency of progesterone. And if your thyroid is being blocked progressively by stress or inadequate diet or rising estrogen, the production of progesterone is largely the consequence of this. So as estrogen rises, thyroid and progesterone decline, and that means that your digestive system is going to be sluggish and tend to increase the endotoxins absorbed from a sluggish intestine, and all of those processes interact. So cleaning out the intestine by having very fibrous food every day, very, very often that will break the whole cycle of migraine and related symptoms. But the reason the intestine needs the fiber to work properly is because it's under-energized by the decreasing thyroid. And so supplementing thyroid is very similar to supplementing fiber in your diet. It gets the endotoxin down, gets your intestine working.
I see.
And all of those increase the progesterone. And just by supplementing progesterone, it sometimes will help to get the thyroid going again and restore, at least for a few years, the proper balance.
And she was wanting to lose this weight, so would this work on that the same way, right?
Yeah. It increases your calorie burning. The endotoxin from a sluggish intestine is poisoning your ability to burn calories.
And the fiber is mainly from vegetables, huh?
Yeah. The one I started emphasizing was carrot salad, shredded carrot with a little bit of olive oil and vinegar and salt for flavoring. But it could be cooked oat bran.
Oat bran.
Or well-cooked mushrooms or cooked bamboo shoots.
Bamboo shoots, oh.
Yeah, those are all pretty safe bulk-forming laxatives.
Do you think so you can find these organic psyllium kind of powder, take that, do you think that works okay too?
Yeah, it's not as tasty as some of the others.
Yeah. So the carrots, though, have a lot of fiber. The grated carrot salad, that's why you like that. I thought you put the coconut oil and vinegar. Did you use olive oil?
I like the taste of olive oil better.
Okay. So, next one here. I lost it. My mouse is just attacking me, Doc. So hold on a second. Do you do pretty good on the computer? Pretty nimble on the computer? Yeah. Okay, here. So here's a person, your close friend with Guillain-Barré syndrome. Guillain-Barré, is that right? Guillain-Barré?
I think so.
Yeah, after 2 Moderna shots. Wow. Terrifying months. Been walking tall and proud with a cane and now can move right. I told him I would ask your help in knowing more things he can do to continue to recover. So he is recovering from this 2 Moderna shots, but more things that he can do to get rid of this guy?
Making sure that your thyroid is adequate for keeping your temperature up. You can see changes in nerve function very quickly when you go from, say, 97-degree oral temperature to 98.6, just using a quick-acting thyroid, for example, and foods that support high-energy metabolism.
So keeping that metabolism ramped up there will help the body to deal with whatever are in these shots.
Yeah, and part of the mechanism by which it's working is to increase your level of pregnenolone and progesterone, which help to regenerate and repair nerves.
Okay. Any advice for someone, writes Ryan, trying to heal gut issues but cannot tolerate eating high sulfur or high histamine foods? They create a lot of anxiousness and a feeling of swollen, hot brain. Wow. Could this be from mobilizing heavy metals?
Well, histamine alone can do terrible things. So the first aid often is just to take an antihistamine or aspirin, or maybe introducing a little coffee into your diet, because coffee has some antihistamine effects, and making sure that your quick-acting carbohydrates are available, depending on your individual digestion. It might be sugar in milk, or orange juice, or even tortillas, or potatoes, or whatever agrees with you.
So quick-acting carbs are what you just mentioned there.
Yeah.
Yeah, orange juice, milk, tortillas.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Michael writes to Dr. Peat, does vitamin E sufficiently thin the blood to replace daily aspirin use? The most recent decision from U.S. Preventive Services Task Force to reverse its recommendation of daily aspirin seems to be unfounded, but wanted to know whether it would be good to rotate to introduce vitamin E to reduce aspirin dose.
Oh, sure. They both have similar effects, but I suspect that the recent anti-small dose of aspirin campaign is just an extension of they have some other drug that they want to sell.
Dr. Peat, really? Here's one for you from Chelsea. Do you have any idea on what causes ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease, and any ideas how to treat it? This is for a 50-year-old pro athlete. Seems to affect athletes at a higher rate. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, about 20 years ago, some guy with a new diagnosis of ALS contacted me, and I had never worked with anyone with that before, and so we sort of funneled along trying different things, and the things he did included shining a bright heat lamp on the back of his head and neck and back for an hour every day, and using progesterone and pregnenolone and thyroid and extra nutrients, vitamin D and milk, and just a very protective, general supportive diet. And after about a few months, he was going to his neurologist regularly, and the people who started the diagnosis at the same time he did went through the expected decline. He declined along with them for 3 or 4 months, but then he stopped declining and went into a recovery, and it was less than a year before he had sold his apparatus that he had needed to use the bathroom and so on. He was everything was working again, so he sold his sick equipment, back to work at his the business.
Well, so you're just talking about, Doc, one of these red, what they call these chicken lamps, right? And
yeah,
one of those.
Clearfront was fine.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't have to have red glass. It can just be one of the...
Oh, just heat.
Reflector.
Yeah, just heat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My dentist, Dr. Stuart Nunley, back in the day before he became aware of mercury, he had what they diagnosed as ALS, right? I mean, he could barely walk. He was in a wheelchair. And he met Dr. Huggins. This is many years ago. And Dr. Huggins really had him do a lot of saunas, you know. That was one of the main things. And he dumped a lot of the mercury. He just got rid of a lot of the mercury. Interesting. I think vitamin C, too. If I understand.
Niacinamide was the other thing this guy took. And he was in the wheelchair for just a couple of months, I think, before he
Wow.
was recovering.
Yeah. Here's a 50-year-old man who wants to increase his testosterone level and wants to know what he can do.
The reason around that age that testosterone falls is that exactly as in women, everything is tending to turn to estrogen. The stress makes the aromatase enzyme increase. So you're probably still producing a normal amount of testosterone, but it's being modified, turned into estrogen. And so the way to raise your testosterone safely is to reduce the stresses that are causing the inflammatory aromatase.
So that
otherwise, when you just take a shot of testosterone, that isn't fixing the mechanism that caused the problem, and so it's going to make it worse as you have more testosterone to turn into estrogen.
Right. So that you don't recommend those. They got these low T centers all over the country, right? Giving people shots and BBs and everything. Yeah. Richard wants to know, what food source of collagen do you find works best? Collagen food sources.
I like oxtail soup.
Oxtails, yeah. That'll do it. Oxtails.
Because of the high gelatin content of the ligaments and tendons.
I found a place stock here where you can actually get from nicely raised pig's cheeks and jowls and feet and stuff like that.
If you know how to cook them, they're great sources.
Pretty good. What can be done for an inguinal hernia? Inguinal. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Inguinal hernia. Nutrition, exercise.
DHEA is usually low when the connective tissues give away like that, and making sure that your cortisol is in balance with the DHEA and progesterone and pregnenolone. The cortisol weakens your connective tissue, tends to create things such as hernias, and the DHEA with aging declines, while the cortisol, if anything, tends to rise with aging. So fixing your nutrition, vitamin D, calcium, thyroid function will help to raise the DHEA concentration relative to cortisol.
And what would be some foods that might help this hernia, kind of, you think?
High protein foods, eggs, seafood, shellfish in particular. Copper is one of the minerals needed to make strong connective tissues.
Oh, that would be like lobster, shrimp,
oysters,
stuff like that. Now, you told me, like in the seafood department, you think some of the best things are, what'd you say, without scallops? Is that right? Scallops?
Oh, yeah.
They're good ones? Yeah, we can get some nice ones here. Here is a person that's been recently diagnosed with cutaneous lupus and was told it could turn to system lupus within the next 6 months. Dr. Peat just share what he understands about this autoimmune syndrome. It is open-ended question. I realize, good news, I have a life prescription for hydrochloroquine. LON, bad joke. Okay, Chandra she's been diagnosed with cutaneous lupus.
I guess that's similar to systemic lupus erythematosus. The skin is often one of the first places you see it. There is an infectious, it's a tuberculin disease, but I haven't seen one of those, but several women over the last 40 years have been diagnosed as having essentially a incurable, untreatable lupus causing arthritis and skin symptoms, and they all quickly recovered as soon as they figured out how to lower their estrogen.
Lowering the estrogen. Interesting.
Yeah, vitamin D, calcium, preferably milk in the diet, and not too much meat or seafood as a source of too much phosphate, and supplementing thyroid and progesterone as needed. And they've had their blood tests that showed they had the classical lupus pattern of antibodies, and they were recovering by the tests as well as by their symptoms.
Dr. Ray Peat is with us, Patrick Timpone, OneRadioNetwork.com. Good to have you here. Thanks for coming on, Dr. Peat. There's an organization, Dr. Peat, called Let's Get Checked, and so I bought this little thyroid check thing, and I'm going to do it today, and because I'm on a little piggy thyroid, I wanted to see my TSH. And it's really interesting. I hope it's accurate. I'm showing the people here. You can't see it because you're not on video, but it's about an 1.5 inch long little tube, right? A little small tube. And what you do is you just take your and they got a special way to do your blood, and you fill this tube up with blood, and you send it in.
Oh,
yeah, and you don't have to go to the place. And I think it was like $90, and I guess it's accurate. I don't know, but it seemed like a very reputable organization. The test looks all well, put together and very organized and everything. I guess it'd be possible to get a TSH level off of enough blood like that, huh?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, must be. Do you see that whole thing with Theranos and this lady who convinced about $100 million worth of investors that she could do 25, 30, or 40 different tests from one drop of blood? Have you followed that story at all? Amazing.
Oh, yeah. She had no shortage of people wanting to invest in it.
Yeah. I mean, they had big time people like George Shultz and really heavy hitters, Bill Clinton and all this. And it turns out this thing didn't ever work. Never worked. Man. Here's a question. This is interesting. And I have a question about chickenpox. It seems that I have it. I'm 31 and quite puzzled. If it's really chickenpox, I think I even had it as a child. What could I do, or what kind of question should I be asking myself? Well, if you already had it, chickenpox isn't really a disease. It's a detoxification thing, isn't it, Doc?
I think it spreads from school teachers are very susceptible to it, even though they had it when they were a kid. Being around kids that develop it, it can spread to the teachers and their families. But usually the second time you get it, it's only a few spots rather than the first time it can cover your whole body.
But for this person, probably not much they need to do. It's probably just going to work itself out, right? It's not...
I think so.
Yeah.
And anesthetic lotions, local anesthetics, can ease the inflammation and pain and itching.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I've been doing some pine pollen that Patrick talks about, an elk antler for testosterone. This is a lady. I feel pretty perky, a little bit tingly, and I'm also doing some progesterone from Dr. Peat on my gums and lips. So it seems like I'm doing better. I'm feeling better, but should I get some compound pharmacy cream for estrogen to help with dryness down there, or use suppositories to moisturize down there?
A few simple things like better nutrition, vitamin A and D and calcium and so on can help, but the local moisturizing effect, the amount of topical estrogen it takes to do that is being absorbed and spreading all through your body with the usual risks of promoting cancer and so on. So the whole idea of menopause as an estrogen deficiency it is actually a reduction of estrogen in the bloodstream while the estrogen builds up inside cells where it does the damage. And the reason you don't see it in the bloodstream is from a progesterone deficiency.
Progesterone. Good.
So when you don't see estrogen in the blood, it's because it's staying inside cells and doing its damage.
Mm-hmm. I bought some of that one that you developed, what is Progestes, a little bottle. I keep it in the fridge. Trouble with the fridge is I don't remember to take it because it's in the fridge. But when I do remember, how much do? I just kind of dip a little. You just take a little dab of it, you think, every day for a guy?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Let's just take a little dab, huh? Mm-hmm. And what does that do for us guys? What does it do for us men?
If you're having any rheumatic symptoms, sore joints, for example, rubbing it into that area reduces the inflammation. But generally, if your body is turning your testosterone into estrogen, you are likely to be losing a general sense of vigor, and the progesterone, by inhibiting the aromatase turning
to estrogen, right?
Yeah. The progesterone is going to actually raise your testosterone when you're in a certain range.
Oh, cool. So it's just a good thing for guys to take a little hit of that, right?
Yeah. If you don't need it, then it has its intrinsic anti-testosterone action. So a young 30-year-old isn't likely to see any benefit, but rather a blocking of their testosterone.
Well, if they would take it when they're 30, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I are way above that, so we're okay. Doc, stay right there. Let me do a quick little break here before we go. Dr. Ray Peat is with us. I just want to mention this great company. I just love these people. This is Shen Blossom and Brandon Amalani. He's been doing this for a very long time. He has some incredible formulas. This formula here that I like a lot is called Arise. I take this along with my pine pollen, and it keeps everybody happy south of the border. Very, very powerful but it's working on the entire body too. Pine pollen's a food, which is great, and this works on the entire body. It's called Arise. So guys, if you're wanting to help, a little help with Mr. Libido and all that, and I'm not married, I'm still a single guy, so I'm just kind of warming up for something. And then this is great. This is called a Mountain Detox, and this is a formula that you can take before and after eating that will help your body to just detoxify from different, all different kind of little things that are running out of control. No telling what they are. And then I mentioned, I got this one. Hold on. Oh, I like this product. This is called Grotein, and it's really a premium quality concentrated plant-based protein kind of formula. One of the first ingredients is bamboo pith. I mentioned this. It's called Grotein. These lights don't work for it, but you don't need a whole lot. A little teaspoon, and I put it in my smoothie with cacao maybe or whatever, and milk or almond milk or moo cow milk. And this is a great thing. It'll keep you going. You can take this in the morning in your smoothie and, have a good time. And it's just a nice thing to take. So these are all products from Shen Blossom. They have some wonderful mushrooms, just all kinds of great things, minerals, really, really nice, high quality, extremely high quality products, all from Shen Blossom, OneRadioNetwork.com.
From the Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.
With Dr. Ray Peat. He's here on the third Monday of the month. Let's see. Okay, this is interesting. Let's see. Susie wants to know, Dr. Peat, the relationship between histamine and hormones. I'm entering menopause 53. I experience increasing sensitivity to histamine. Wow, another one. During my 40s, such as strawberries and chocolate, giving me migraines, and other foods like meats, more than a day old, giving me insomnia. Taking progesterone, and it has somewhat raised my histamine tolerance. I'm reading that some doctors think histamine tolerance is a gut dysbiosis problem. Should I be looking at thyroid or gut dysbiosis or hormones, increased progesterone to address the histamine sensitivity? I do not take any thyroid supplements right now.
That's the basic idea.
Mm-hmm.
The mast cell isn't the only source of histamine, but it's a major source, and it's one that has been studied the most. And estrogen activates the mast cells to produce more estrogen, more histamine, and progesterone has the opposite effect, reducing histamine formation and release from the mast cells.
Mm-hmm.
So for such things as the bladder oversensitivity, you can pretty much just turn that off by increasing your thyroid and progesterone, mm-hmm. because of their effect on the estrogen.
And we want to get that TSH 0.5, right?
Around that,
wow.
0.2 or 3 or 4.
That low.
Open.
That low.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm going to do this little test I told you about. I've been taking the piggy thyroid, for a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I get this guy and it says my TSH is maybe 1 or 2, it used to be 3. Hopefully it'll be down. I'm feeling great. Would I just increase the piggy and just keep it till I get to 0.5? Is that how you do it?
What about your temperature?
Temperature, when I wake up in the morning, like 91, 98.1, something like that.
That's probably good.
Pretty good, huh?
After breakfast, it should be up to 98.6 or 7.
Yeah, it goes up. It goes up like after the show. It's up there.
Yeah, that's the most practical way to judge your thyroid level, but you can back it up by looking at your blood test.
Is there a big difference between the little piggy stuff like I have? I got it from Vietnam. This natural piggy stuff, and the stuff made in the lab. Is there a big difference?
Not really.
Not really.
There are a lot of companies that don't really know how to process the natural glandular material. So if you find a product that works just right, then you should stay with it, because a lot of the products aren't labeled accurately. They can either be too strong or too weak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The good thing about the synthetic is it's very consistent.
Very consistent. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Dr. Peat, please explain shedding. I'm just hearing all kinds of things. I went to an Eagles concert last month, and you either had to be vaccinated or tested, which I got tested against my will, but I wanted to see the Eagles in concert. So I questioned shedding because I was around thousands of people that have been vaccinated, but I really haven't had any kind of experience from it. Interesting.
People are always shedding.
Everything, right?
Yeah, whether they've been vaccinated or not. For years, they've been testing breath as a way of analyzing what's going on in your body. And if you put a cold piece of metal under your nose and exhale the hot air onto the cold thing, it condenses fluid, and then they analyze the fluid, and things as big as large stretches of DNA and RNA are somehow getting into the airstream when you exhale. And rubbing the skin, you can find all kinds of genetic material, as well as proteins and other chemicals. So you can pretty well tell what a person has been exposed to by testing both their skin and their breath for these pretty large molecules that it's hard to imagine how they get vaporized.
Interesting. Wow. We have a lot of emails that we haven't gotten to, and so next month I promise you what I'll do is I'll dig into the older ones. So if you've sent those in, sorry, I just failed to do that today and just took the newer ones. So we've got a lot from last month we didn't get to. I'll do a couple here before we go. We have another show coming up. But Dr. Peat, this is John. He's in California. John says his testosterone level is 1,139. Wow. He's 77. His total cholesterol is 266. Estradiol 27, DHT 47. I do not feel any benefits for such a high testosterone. Is that an issue, he is asking? That's pretty high, right? 1,139?
Yeah, but if it isn't turning to estrogen, that's the good thing. If it was turning to estrogen, he would be experiencing something like breast growth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's okay to have very high testosterone.
It's okay, yeah. Dr. Peat, this is Julie. I'm really wanting to try orange juice like you and Adam Bergstrom have been talking about, but I can't get organic oranges or organic orange juice. I live out in the country near some stores that don't have organics. Is it okay if I drink orange juice from conventional orange juice?
Yeah, I use that a lot.
You use it a lot? Yeah.
Just according to how good it tastes.
Yeah, yeah. I have noticed, I really do think the organic orange juice and oranges taste better. It tastes sweeter, I think. Unless it's just a placebo thing, Doc. I don't know. How about this? Would you please ask Dr. Peat if my organic orange peels and powder then would be a good source of vitamin C, organic orange peels?
It does contain vitamin C, but I don't think its main value. Organic orange peel is clean because a lot of the chemicals, agricultural chemicals, would be concentrated in the peeling, but the anti-inflammatory chemicals that are in the juice itself are very concentrated in the peeling, so its main benefit would be to make marmalade out of it.
So you think in general, in your opinion, with the conventional oranges, that most of the yuck stuff would be in the peels and not in the juice, you think?
Yeah.
Well, that's good news, really. It's hard to find organic oranges even. Sometimes.
Yeah, when we find some, even if they're bitter,
Yeah, you get
not good for juice, we use the peeling for making marmalade.
oh marmalade. Dr. Peat, adrenal glands are required for making cortisol and aldosterone from progesterone. How did progesterone substitute for the absence of adrenal glands in Hans Selye's experiments? Selye's experiments.
It's just the shape of the progesterone molecule that is such a stabilizing function that it doesn't have to be turned into either aldosterone or cortisol, but in the absence of those, the progesterone itself has some of that function in the sense of helping to retain sodium in your bloodstream and to not get hypoglycemia, but it's not being turned into either of those. And if you have, for example, a tumor producing too much aldosterone or cortisol, taking a large amount of progesterone protects against the excess of those. So it's an intrinsic property of the progesterone that can balance either an excess or a deficiency of the other hormones.
Interesting. Here is a lady that recently started taking progesterone, about 30 milligrams at night, during the second 2 weeks of my cycle to deal with PCOS and fibroids. While I'm on it, it helps me when I stop for the second 2 weeks. I feel bloated and discomfort in the ovaries. Any advice on dosages? Also, also just started tiny amounts of Silomel. You guys are the best. Thanks. So, yeah, so before we get to that, so when you just do a little dab of the Progest-Ease, do you know how many milligrams we're getting? Because a lot of people are taking 30 to 50 milligrams of the progesterone creams.
Oh, in the cream,
Yeah.
I don't have any idea how much you're absorbing through your skin, because people's skin has different amounts of blood supply and thicker or thinner skin. So it's highly unpredictable from a topical use.
How much you're getting in there. Yeah, because they claim you get one squirt for 50, but who knows how much is going in?
About 5 or 10%.
Is that right? Wow.
Some tests show.
So what about the Progest-Ease? How much is going in a dab of that? We don't really have a way to measure that, do we?
If it goes into your mouth, it's essentially 100% absorbed.
And milligram-wise, can you conjecture?
Eighth of a teaspoon is 50 milligrams.
Wow. An eighth of a teaspoon. Let me write that down. That's not a lot, is it?
No.
Pretty small. An eighth of a teaspoon is 50 milligrams of the Progest-Ease.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going right in your mouth, so you know you're getting it, right, Doc?
Yeah. That's why just 2 or 3 drops
Sure.
gives you maybe 15 milligrams.
And so there's no real issues about getting just a little bit too much of that?
Not in that range.
No.
Some people with extremely high estrogen can hardly feel half a teaspoon of progesterone until they get their estrogen under control.
Mm-hmm. What would be a sign, before we go, what would be a sign of extremely high estrogen for boys and girls? What would be some signs, if you think, just to tell you your estrogen's not happy, too high?
Irritability is one of the main signs. Restlessness. And then with prolonged exposure, the breasts develop.
I'm sorry. For guys, you could actually start to grow some breasts. Huh?
Yeah. And girls often start getting the effects, both the development of the nipples and the irritability and psychological effects of estrogen when they're only around 9 years old.
Wow. So too much estrogen for the young ones.
Yeah.
So that's what happened when this whole thing happened with maybe soy milk early on, when that big craze happened years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People start getting their kids soy milk.
In the animal studies, it made the male young more feminine. Their genitals were feminized.
Wow.
And then their susceptibility to cancer later in life was increased.
Yeah. I read stories about some of somehow the Philippines got all hooked up in this whole soy milk craze, Doc, I guess in the 80s, right, when it all came out. And they were starting to have their periods at 10 years old.
Sometimes earlier.
Wow. That's not good, right? Not good.
No.
No. Not good.
In some of the areas where they their regular diet included a lot of coconuts, the age of puberty averaged as high as 18 in those areas.
Wow, what was that? What's that all about? Is that good? Is that better?
Yeah, I think it allows better development of bones and full development of the brain and personality.
Really? Fascinating. So just in general, our culture, these young girls starting their periods at 12, 13, it's probably more unnatural than what it would be if we lived out in the woods or something, maybe.
Yeah.
You think?
Right.
Right. Well, that's what we get for moving out of the woods, Dr. Peat. You know? Well, it's just an honor to have you here. Thanks so much for your time. And how's your painting coming? You still painting?
The weather has been too cold to spend much time outside lately.
Oh, so that's where you paint? You paint outside?
Yeah.
You paint landscapes and things.
Everything, but just to not mess up the house with paint.
That's right. Don't mess up the house. Dr. Peat's newsletter is Ray Peat's newsletter at gmail.com. Ray Peat's newsletter at gmail.com. RayPeat.com. He has a lot of just all kinds of articles, and he's here on the third Monday of every month. And Dr. Peat, thank you.
Okay.
We love you. Thank you very much. And you take care of yourself, okay?
Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Dr. Ray Peat, he's the real deal, man. The real deal. What a sweet guy. And he knows a lot of stuff, huh? Phew. Okay, we're going to take a little break here, and then we're going to talk to Rulin Shu. She's a biochemist and a quantum physicist and a really cool gal, and very smart lady. And we're going to talk about, among other things, pro-youthing and keeping younger with her product Pearl Sim, which we love, and to brush your teeth. The best ever teeth brushing thing. Okay, we're just going to get set up here. Stay right there. And joined by Rulin Shu. So take care. We will see you. Thank you. May the blessings be. Pass on these links to everyone that you care about. And don't forget, all of our shows are on BitChute. You know BitChute? And we have the link to the BitChute page right on the front page of One Radio Network, BitChute. All of our videos are there. You can sign up and subscribe. Prescribe to the BitChute and hit the little bell, and we'll tell you every time we put a new show. Also, on the front page of One Radio Network, there's a Telegram thing, and you can do on Telegram and join us on Telegram. And then, because who knows how long we'll last on Facebook, every time we turn around, we get put in jail for 30 days. But so we're just out of jail for a 30-day stint, and the food was pretty good, and we're just kidding. So I love you all. May the blessings be. Just see you in a few minutes. Stay right there.
From the Hill Country in Texas, broadcasting worldwide, This is OneRadioNetwork.com.